Hey everybody, this is Christopher from thewholeworld.net. My friend Josh is looking to do a podcast, and I told him to help him out, I'd show him how I put together Roomful of Nerd stuff. I thought this might be kind of fun to put on the YouTube page too, kind of show how the podcast gets made. I've actually already put together this week's podcast, but the video didn't record right, so I'm just gonna throw another version of it together real quick. Just kind of go through the steps I used to make it. Just a preface, I am not an audio technician by any stretch of the imagination. There is probably a far more efficient way to do this than I do it, but I have found a way to do the podcast and make it sound good. And so I'm okay with that. If you do have some tips for how I can do it a little easier, a little more efficient, a little better, make it sound crisper, make it sound cleaner, do let me know in the comments. I feel like I turned out some pretty good audio for somebody with as much experience as I have with this, which is approximately none. To start with, there is the obvious logistical issue of recording the podcast, which is to say I live in Georgia and Mike lives in Oregon. There is literally an entire country between us. We record using this program. This is Pamela for Skype. It just kind of links in with your Skype and records your calls. It's not a terribly expensive program, but they do have a trial pay offer, so I got this, which is the professional version for relatively cheap. It records in a, let's see if I can pull this up, variety of formats. We record in MP3, 48 hertz. Technically, I usually wind up adjusting it down to 44.1 hertz in the editing, because for the WordPress plugin I use for the podcast, that works a little bit better. But it records here, saves it in folders in MP3. The folder which I already have opened up off screen, because not just podcast stuff in it, guys. Actually, it is just podcast stuff in this folder, but all we're going to do is I am going to take this week's podcast, drag it over, and let Audacity load it in and import the MP3 file, which will take about a minute or so. Alright, so there's our audio pulled into the program. I use Audacity to edit. I've used Adobe Premiere, and I played with Sony Acid once years ago. And I just found Audacity to be the easiest to use, because again, I don't really have experience with a lot of these things, so I just need something kind of base functions. And most importantly, Audacity is completely free to use. So it is definitely what I would recommend using, especially to start out with. Just get else queued up here for when I need it in a little bit real quick. Boom. Okay. So the other thing we do with Pamela is we record in two separate channels. Top channel is me, and the bottom channel is Mike. And that way I can go through and clean up the individual tracks if I had to. I've never had to do that, which is good, because I imagine the day I have to do that is the day I will probably scream and throw something against the wall. As you can hear, we're kind of...
Why is it criminal to eat Fruity Pebbles?
Because they're disgusting.
Feels like as good a note as any to start off. I like Fruity Pebbles.
So as you can hear, we kind of ping pong on the left and the right channels. That's fine for right now. We're going to deal with that as one of the very last things we do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean up the noise in the podcast. It's not that bad, but occasionally you can hear things like our fans in the background, or like my mic might be too close to the computer fan one week and I don't realize it. So what I do is I find a section where it's just nobody talking, just silence. Right there is pretty good. Nobody's talking, there's a little bit of a silence, and then right there is where Mike starts talking again. I start talking again, one of us. We're going to go up to Effect. And then we're going to click on this link right here that says Noise Removal. And we're going to click on Get Noise Profile. I tend to just leave the settings alone in Audacity. I've changed some settings for Let's Plays, but for the podcast, I find the default settings work fine for me. We click on Get Noise Profile. And that just kind of analyzes that right there. Then we select the entire track, go back to Effect, and repeat Noise Profile. Or repeat Noise Removal, rather. That's going to take about 3 minutes. Again, this is a longer podcast file, and it's just going to go through and it's going to pick up anything that's kind of below that level audio-wise and clean it up from the track. Okay, and with the noise removal done, you can just kind of look and you can see that it cleaned up just a little. This week was actually a pretty good one for that. Next thing I like to do is I run an amplify effect on it, which is kind of an optional thing. This week it actually brings it down a little bit. Mainly I just run that so it keeps it from redlining. Alright, and that didn't really change much this week as Audacity proceeds to lock up. There we go. That didn't change much this week. Normally, it may change a little bit to it. Sometimes Mike and I might be a little farther away from the mic, or we might be quieter, or something like that. This week, we got a pretty good recording. The next thing I do, which Mike loves to give me shit about, because for months it was the only thing I would do to the podcast, we can't really keep the level of banter up like it sounds like we do in the podcast, because we do spend a lot of time thinking and stuff like that. So we run a noise removal. Or not a noise removal, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. We run a truncate silence. We already did noise removal. Truncate silence, and again, I just leave the default settings and it works fine for us. Basically anything below that level it's going to read as silence, and it's going to remove it. Alright, and that shaved about 9 minutes off the podcast. It's down to an hour, 23 minutes now. That's about average, somewhere between 8 to 10 minutes of silence getting chopped out of the podcast. I've seen it take only a minute or two. Sometimes I've seen it take 15, 20 minutes off. Just some weeks we don't have much to say. We were pretty talkative this week. So the next problem we need to take care of, now that we've got everything cleaned up and removed all the guff, we have to take care of the ping ponging, because remember we're on separate audio channels, and that's easy enough to take care of. Just go to tracks and stereo track to mono. And that puts us on one audio track.
Why is it criminal to eat Fruity Pebbles?
Because they're disgusting.
Feels like as good a note as any to start off. I like Fruity Pebbles.
No, they're gross and they turn your milk like an awful...
Now with that done, this is where I'd cut in the intro. I do have a pre-cut intro that I use for the most part weekly. What kind of scale on which I'm editing all these things. Those are all just assorted theme songs and clips and etc. Tribute audios. This is where Michael leaves some comment on the video about how I'm a data hoarder and never delete anything. But when I need something, I'm the guy you'll go to first. I do tend to cut the intro in the same way every week. Zoom in a few times until I see the 20-second mark. I arrange it so the first audio peak is at 20 seconds. Then what I do, I want the music to be loud right up until we start talking, but then I want it to fade out kind of sharply. So what I do is I go from the end of the track to the 15-second mark. I do a fade out. And then I go from the end of the track to the 20-second mark. And I do another fade out. And that just kind of helps get the music over with. Start talking, but still fades it out. Next thing I do, both tracks, mix and render, and that'll combine them. And that cuts everything down the way it should be. And if we hit play.
Hey, let's do the thing.
Why is it criminal to eat Fruity Pebbles?
Because they're disgusting.
Feels like as good a note as any to start off. I like Fruity Pebbles.
And that's all there is to it. Start to finish, that took about 16 minutes. 15-ish, I guess, really. From there, you would just go File to Export. And as you can see, I have all of them right here. There is this week's that I've already done and exported and thrown it into the folder. Once you go to export, it'll let you add tags to it where you can put the names, titles, albums, all that good stuff that I throw on there. I'm not going to save this one. I've already done it. But that is how I put together a room full of nerd stuff. I hope you all learned something from this. I hope this was helpful. Like I said, if you have any advice, please feel free to comment on it. And if you want to tell me I'm a noob who doesn't know what he's doing, please feel free to die in a fire. Thank you very much.